Hi, welcome to another video on Ancient Greek. This time we will learn more about Ancient Greek accents. In this occasion, we will focus on two kinds of words, the Enclitics and the Proclitics. But before going any further, throughout this video I will use many technical words such as circumflex, acute, perispomenon, oxytone, all of those, okay? If you don't know what these words mean, please watch my introduction to Ancient Greek accents, where I explain these concepts absolutely in detail, so you're not lost throughout my explanation in this video about Enclitics and Proclitics. So let's start with the Enclitics, okay? An Enclitic word is a special kind of word that works in combination with the preceding word, okay? For the sake of pronunciation, but it can affect the accentuation of the preceding word. Actually, the word enclitic comes from Ancient Greek from the verb enklinein, which means to lean on. And the reason is because these special words lean on the previous word and they pass their accent to that previous word. Let's see an example. Gynetis edokemoi ployonti. Some woman gave me a ship. Okay? In this sentence, please notice the words tis, moi, and ti. These three words, each of them, gave to their respective previous words an acute accent. And that's the trick. These words are enclitic. In the previous example, the enclitics would give an acute accent to the previous word on their last syllable, okay? That's how enclitics work. Now, we have two kinds of enclitics. We have, on the one hand, enclitics of one syllable, and on the other hand, enclitics of two syllables. In the dictionary, enclitics of one syllable will appear with no accent at all, okay? So let's take, for instance, the particle ge. If you go to your dictionary of Ancient Greek and look for that word, the word ge will appear with no accent at all, okay? And it's enclitic. However, if the enclitic has two syllables, like the word pote, then it will appear in the dictionary as an oxytone. That means as having an acute accent on the last syllable. Luckily for us, the list of enclitics is not that long. So we have, for instance, the indefinite tis, which means someone or something in the neuter. This word in all of its forms is enclitic. We also have several indefinite adverbs that are enclitic, such as pote, that I previously mentioned, pou, po, pos, or poi. We also have two verbs that are enclitic. These are the verb eimi, which is the verb to be, and the verb femi, which is to say. These two verbs are enclitic in all of their forms except for the second person singular. Also, some personal pronouns are enclitic as long as they're not used in their emphatic form. These are me, mu, moi, se, su, soy, and he, hu, hoi. All of these are enclitic. Let us see now the rules for the enclitics, which normally is the most difficult part for students that are trying to learn the Ancient Greek accents. So the first one is that if a word is accentuated on the last syllable and then another word comes next, that would have normally a grave accent. However, if the following word is enclitic, that grave accent will change into an acute accent. So, as in the previous example, we have gynetis. Gyne here has an acute accent, and tis, the enclitic, has changed the grave accent that that word would have otherwise into an acute accent. The second rule involves words with a circumflex accent, okay? In the case of a properispomenon, that is a word that has a circumflex accent on the second last syllable, when confronted, let's say, to an enclitic, the enclitic will pass on the acute accent, and the word will have a circumflex accent and an acute accent. For instance, also from the previous example, we have ployonti, some ship or a ship. Okay, so you can see here that the word ployon will have the circumflex accent on the second last syllable and the acute inherited from the enclitic on the last syllable. However, in the case of a perispomenon, that is a word that has a circumflex accent on the last syllable, when confronted to an enclitic, the enclitic will not be able to pass on the acute accent. Okay, the word will preserve the circumflex accent, and the enclitic word will lose the accent. For instance, we have boostis, which means an ox. Okay, In this case, you can see that the circumflex accent of booze is preserved, but the word this simply has no accent because it's an enclitic, but the acute accent could not be received. The third rule involves the acute accent, okay? As a general rule, within a word, you cannot have two acute accents in consecutive syllables, okay? That is the general rule. This applies, for instance, to paroxytone words. Paroxytone words are those that have an acute accent on the second last syllable. So whenever you have this kind of word followed by an enclitic, then the enclitic will try to pass on the accent, let's say, but the paroxytone cannot receive it. Why? Well, because you cannot have in consecutive syllables two acute accents. For instance, we have logos tis, which we can translate as some argument or a word, or well, as many translations, logos. As you can see, the tis, the enclitic, will lose its acute accent, try to pass it on, but logos cannot receive it because no two acute accents can coexist within a word in consecutive syllables. However, something very special occurs if the enclitic has two syllables. So let's take the plural of the previous example and say logoi tines. In this case, well, logoi cannot still receive the acute accent from the enclitic because of the same rule, but the word tines will have an acute accent. So this is very special. So when the enclitic has two syllables and cannot pass on the acute accent to the previous word, it will preserve it on the last syllable of the enclitic. Now, following the same logic of the previous rule, our fourth rule applies to proparoxytone words, that is, words that have an acute accent on the third last syllable. So for instance, the word anthropos, okay? In this case, when the word anthropos or any other proparoxytone is confronted to an enclitic, the enclitic will be able to pass on the acute accent, and we will have, for instance, anthropos tis. And here anthropos has two acute accents, but notice that there's a syllable in between. So there's no conflict with having two acute accents within a word as long as those two accents do not come in consecutive syllables. And finally, the last rule of the enclitics is that if you put several enclitics one after the other, they will pass on their acute accents to the previous one, and only the last one will not have an accent. So let's see an example. Eitis puti blepe, which means if someone sees something somewhere. Okay, doesn't matter the translation, but notice that we have three enclitics working here, and the last one, in this case T, doesn't have an acute accent, but the two previous ones, they do. And also the first one, which is A, which is not an enclitic, but has the acute accent from the first enclitic, and this is accentuated because of the pu, and the pu is accentuated because of the T. Well, now let's go into something easier, the Proclitics, okay? Or in some books you will find them as atonics. These are words that do not have a natural accent. They do not have an accent of their own, right? So they are all monosyllables, and the only way for them to have an accent is if they are followed by an enclitic. The list of Proclitics is even shorter. So we have the nominative masculine and feminine from the definite article, that is ho, he, and hoi, hai. All of those are Proclitics. They don't have an accent of their own. Also Proclitic are the prepositions eis, which means to or into, ek, which means from or out of, and en, which means in. And finally, also the words e, u, and hos are Proclitic. But be careful, okay? The word u, which means no, and this is an exception, will have an acute accent if and only if the word u is the last word of a sentence or the last word of a clause. Pay attention. Well, thank you very, very much if you have watched the video up to this point. I know these are complicated rules and the kinds of words bring many complications to students, but I hope that this video has helped you to clarify some concepts or to learn rules that were not that explicit in your textbooks. If you have any questions, as always, please leave them in the comments. I read them. I read all the comments actually, and I try to respond to all of those that include questions, and I try to help you succeed in your journey into learning ancient Greek. Okay, please give a like, subscribe to the video. You'll help me a lot if you do. Share this, okay? Let the word spread that there's a good resource on ancient Greek accents. That will make me very, very happy. Okay. Until next time, and may the force be with you.